Hello and everybody, welcome to the Farm for Dreams International Euphonium Summit, second in Living History series with our guest, Benjamin Horne. Thanks for coming and being a part of this and just showcasing your journey as we covered your uprising through the seventh grade in your first in Living History series, which the video will be posted below. And on your site, internationaleuphoniumsummit.com/Benjamin-Horne, or you can find all the links just listed below. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Yes.
Absolutely. What a thrill to have you on. So, as we covered, you're up to seventh grade and your first lessons with Adam Frey and transcribing all those shows, talking about Teal Sound. And I got to listen to Teal Sound, one of Teal Sound's shows on YouTube and getting to watch that. That was really cool.
No
Um,
way.
yeah, if you need the link, I'll send it to you. I actually put it part of your one of your blog posts for your first episode, so people can refer back to those to see your older brother, or rather, listen to your older brother playing.
Do
I think that was from one of his years, from if I did my calculations correct.
you remember what year it was?
No, not because I did like literally right after we got off, I went and researched and I totally geeked out on DCI and Teal Sound and where they're at now and some of the old some of the staff members that were still, trying to, yeah, such and such did this and it was just really cool. Um, so let's go back into the seventh grade year and how was it like taking your first lessons with Adam Frey?
Um, the first lessons they were interesting. I think for me it was a lot of just realization. You know, I feel like anybody when you first start taking, your first private lessons and someone's actually looking and listening to your playing under a microscope, even if you are a little seventh grader like I was at this time, it's like, oh yeah, I mm, the- I remember like first of all hearing him play and be like, oh, that's really cool. The phoning can sound like that. But I think also some of the things as someone is looking at you playing and you're just like, oh, how do I do these things so that I can sound that way? I'm not sure if it was the very first lesson, but I know one of the things that Adam Fry learned very early on about me as a player at that point was that I did not articulate notes correctly.
Huh.
Um, and that was something that took like a couple of years to really get right. Um, but it was one of those things like, oh yeah, you play well and you sound good, at the time for seventh grade. But it's just like, oh yeah, how are you how are you articulating are you using your tongue? Like those types of things. Um,
So you were using your throat?
yes. Or I was just like, or I was air articulating everything. I was like pop, 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 everything. And just kind of like doing like boop, 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 all the time. Um, but somehow I still sounded okay and was able to get by with it. But I mean, of course, it's easy for us to get by with it as a euphonium or low brass player because in middle school, what are we playing? But half notes and whole notes most of the time. Or occasionally, I remember in middle school because I did sound reasonably well. Like I did occasionally get like some solos or things, but I would just slur the entire thing. You know. And of course, most of the euphonium stuff we get is lyrical stuff anyway. So easy to get by, easy to go unnoticed,
It
until it
is.
didn't. Yeah.
So what was that moment? Did that moment of kind of awareness by your director and or a tag team with Adam like bring prominence to in like kind of highlight your potential in seventh grade, or did that happen in eighth grade?
I think it definitely began to do some things for me. Seventh grade, I made my first honor band. So I think that attracted a little bit of attention that is like, okay, well, he kind of can play the instrument some ways, even though I still wasn't articulating notes very well. But like I could get past like the first round of Georgia all state, which again ends up in us being in district honor bands and stuff. But I think the whole articulation thing took a little bit longer to grasp. But definitely, I think making honor band that year kind of brought some attention of me being a reasonable player, I guess.
And did you'd mentioned in our first in series that you also did jazz band.
Yes.
On which
Seven,
instrument?
on seventh grade, I started jazz
Trumpet?
band playing on euphonium at the time, just
Okay,
playing a
cool.
trombone part. But it was one of those things where, so I think we also ended up in the last episode talking about how seventh grade, yeah, was like
Yeah.
my brother's first year of drum corps. And for me, how that was really an enlightenment to understanding like, oh, music can be fun as well, and you can do some of these other things. Because at that time I was mostly more concerned with playing baseball and being an athlete, right? And um, so I started joining jazz band because it was just another avenue, something else that I could do to keep playing. And I remember our jazz bands, they met in the morning, so that's the one thing that sucked because I still am not a morning person. So I don't know why, but again, it was just
That's
another
what it is.
reason, another thing for me to play, another thing for me to keep playing. So I joined the jazz band in seventh grade playing euphonium. And then at the end of seventh grade, by this point, I'm taking my lessons with Adam Frey. I made district honor band. So there's, you know, so so there's a little bit of confidence there, I would say, for me to make the decision to be like, you know what? Let's try something different. I want to be in the jazz band in eighth grade, but you know what? I decided to learn to play trombone that summer. So the summer before eighth grade, I start learning to play trombone for the sole purpose of, hey, I was in jazz band this entire semester, and occasionally, I was playing a trombone part. I think I was playing like the last trombone part on euphonium,
Mhm.
and I'm sitting next to the trombone players, and they're getting to play glisses and stuff, and I'm just like, hey, I want to do that. That looks like fun. And so, yeah, that's what kind of led to me that summer learning to play trombone. So I came back in eighth grade and now was playing trombone and jazz band, um, as well as continuing to play euphonium and concert band and all that stuff. And yeah,
So
but
so with the glisses and all the cool jazz licks we hear on trombone and trumpet and such like that, as as you've progressed throughout the seasons, have you adapted those techniques and abilities onto euphonium, and you utilize those techniques on euphonium as well? Or do
I
you
could say a
leave it
little,
solely for those instruments?
I could say a little bit of learning how to play with certain jazz inflections kind of derived from those years, from those experiences and not only just like, oh, well, trombone can glisten, euphonium can't do that, but like trying to figure it out anyway. That was kind of like the beginnings of that. I've been thinking about it a lot lately of just, there's just that childlike wonder that we sometimes lose as we become adults. And kind of that thing of like, oh, well, let me try to figure this out and try to see if I can do this anyway, because I don't know any better yet. And that was kind of me at that point in time of like, yeah, I'm playing trombone, but I can also play all this on even I've practiced on both instruments, and just try to figure things out or just mess around on the instrument. And again, having made, an honor band in seventh grade, there's a little bit more confidence coming in there. So I think learning some of those inflections, I think on trombone, and then transferring them to euphonium, and even still having had some of that experience prior of trying to do them on euphonium anyway in seventh grade, that I think that definitely is something that kind of carried over the years.
So what was what was the mindset that you had taken in seventh grade to I guess the revelation that you weren't articulating right, and then you're in jazz band. the articulation must have shored up for you that year with all this attention, right? Or did it come later?
I would say it got better. I still wouldn't say it was great yet, but it got better. Yeah, it's funny that I think about it that I wish I had recordings of me playing trombone back then because me talking about articulation issues, and then I decided it's a great idea in eighth grade to play trombone and to take private lessons on trombone.
Oh, so you
How
took
much harder that is to get by, how much harder it is to have bad articulation get by on trombone than it is on euphonium, because if you're not articulating, then you're going to have a bunch of slide in the sound. So I'd love to hear recordings of how I got by. I guess to be quite honest with you, I can't remember. Um, but I remember the articulation wasn't really perfect yet. I mean, it never really is, but it wasn't really the way I'd like it to be. I think even still then in eighth grade, and somehow I got by playing trombone and jazz band, probably because I glissed everything. Let's be honest. And then uh,
that's why you want to do trombone.
yeah, yeah, just so I could gliss the entire time. No, I'm just playing. And something must have started clicking because I know also in eighth grade, and getting back to euphonium things, that was when I made All-State band for the first time. So obviously to do that, in Georgia All-State, there's a lyrical etude and there's a technical etude, and they still have the same process to this day. So somehow I must have played that technical etude well enough. There was articulated passages in there to make All-State. And I think I was second chair, no less. So like something worked. I don't know what, but something worked.
What would it be? I wonder, just thinking of phonetics and the foreign glottal stop as linguistics people, like I'm thinking like instead of like takat, like the cup formation in the back of the throat, maybe that was so well developed. I don't know. You must have an incredible triple tongue.
I do not.
Okay.
But I would say so. The one thing that I do remember, though, as I somewhat exaggerate, is that I do remember the process that Adam Fry put me through to like get me to articulate to completely. What was that he had me completely exaggerate um how we do it. So, how in general most people are taught, the tip of your tongue to the top of your teeth or whatever. Some people put the tongue in different places.
Yeah.
But for me, because it was really hard for me to understand where the tongue placement was to get an articulation, that to really exaggerate it and to make sure that I was doing it, he taught me at first, before we get to actually tonguing it the right way, like that first year, I think, or two, the process was having me actually put my tongue in between my teeth.
Hmm.
Oh, all right. And that was the exaggeration that eventually is like, all right, now that you're kind of understanding that, I think after like the first year, we started moving the tongue could move higher in the mouth, right? But like that was like the very clear because we use like a mouthpiece visualizer and stuff. So that made it very clear to be able to see, okay, is your tongue actually doing what it's supposed to do? And getting used to at least the action of moving it quickly in and out, right? And I think that's what kind of got me able to play articulated things better at first. Of course, obviously, when you're doing that and getting used to that type of motion, you know, being able to tongue things very fast is still difficult, but at least, being able to do things at a pretty moderate tempo. And again, getting used to that motion, I think helped a lot in those early years. And then, as I said, eventually, as I moved into high school, the tongue placement just got higher and higher until we got to where it needed to be. That was where we started.
Huh. So just thinking about how, like, if there is by chance any of the just starting out euphonium players or musicians in general who are having those tonguing issues, those articulation issues. It almost sounds like, and I've considered this over the past 20 plus years, is instead of, we have the, just the rim um, holder for, visual purposes, but for the quickness and the precise placement, perhaps putting a lifesaver in between the teeth and using that instead of having to hold a piece of metal to your face, you're actually focusing, you know, other
Mm,
that tongue placement when you don't want to look silly in public, going around walking around in middle school or junior high with a piece of metal to your mouth.
yeah.
Huh. That's fascinating. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's not like I was walking around school with
Of
visualizer
course.
going through all the time.
Well,
I
you
was.
could.
It was only in no, no, we're not doing that. But in lessons or in my practice sessions, we do that.
That would be interesting to see. No. Okay. So in eighth grade, auditioning for Georgia and getting the all-state band. What was it? What was it like stepping into that and your brother hitting up with Teal Sound and getting to be in drum corps and like what was the energy in, at your house like with as a parent like that would like supercharge like my excitement to know my kids would be doing that great. Like, how are your parents? Like, what was the atmosphere like at your house that eighth grade year?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I can say at least at that point, eighth grade, when I was in middle school, my brother was in college, so he wasn't in the house at that point.
Okay,
Um, but um, that's an interesting question of what their perspective was like
yeah, were
at
they
that
as
point in time.
excited and involved with music more than ever, or had they been with your brother in high school band and being such a an authority figure in that local high school band there? Were they a part of that then?
Well, I would say when my brother was in high school, my dad helped a lot with the band program. He did some things with that. Um, in middle school, I feel like there wasn't a whole lot for them to do other than take me to the auditions or to take me
Sure.
to my lessons, which they did, and then that they were happy to oblige and excited about that.
Well,
I know at least with my brother marching drum corps at that time, it was definitely something where like, oh, we were at shows every year, right? Um, we'd go to I think we'd go to spring training, of course, to drop them off. I want to say that my dad volunteered on the food truck at some point. I don't remember, but I want to say that he did. And then
did you get to geek out with the horns and stuff like that?
oh yeah, I would be there because I would be at the camps, and I wouldn't be geeking out, but I'd be at least be sitting and listening in front of the horn line. Probably the reason why I have a hearing loss now. I'm just
What?
playing, but I'd be I have no idea. But yeah, I hang out and listen to the horn line and in their rehearsals. We go to camps every now and again. Of course, we would go to Family Friends Day, their first show, because Teal Sound in those years in the late 2000s, even though they were based out of Florida, out of Jacksonville, they would do their spring training, their preseason boot camp rehearsal ish, if you will. They would do that in Georgia, actually, um, in southern Georgia. So it wasn't too far away. It was like 3, 4 hours away. So we drive and go to Family Day or maybe watch a rehearsal. And then I think at that time, PCI used to do more than one show in Georgia. So we'd go to at least one, if not two of them, if not both of them. And then we go to finals every summer. And what was always fun for me back in those days was that, Teal Sound in the years that my brother marched was still an open class corps, or
Mhm.
I think in that first year, 2007, they were still calling it Division Two. But we would not only go to finals for Division Two, but we would stick around and go to world class or Division One finals too. So 2007 on
You're
the
talking
last
about
year.
that in our first one with you watching the horse show.
Yeah. So going out there to see that, and then in 2008 and 2009, going to those as well. Um, I would definitely say 2008 was even more of a formative year
And
as
that was
far
your
as
eighth grade year, right?
yes, yes, that will be going into eighth grade. Um, and I would say that was even more of a formative summer to watch drum corps because uh, the definitive show that stuck with me was the corps that won that year, which was Phantom Regiment with their Spartacus show. So being able to see that in person and being there, you can go and watch the videos and just see how crazy the crowd was there, and to know, hey, I was there too. And ironically enough, finals that year happened at Indiana University, which ironically is where I ended up attending school, right? Um, but um, but yeah, being there was great. And I think it was an even more of a formative year that I think really made me a fan of drum corps. And because by this point, 2007 was kind of like, oh, like, what is this? And me being in seventh grade or going into seventh grade and kind of just like, yeah, music is at that point, and just, okay, drum corps, this is weird, but I guess this is cool. Whatever. At least I got to go to California for finals. And then 2008, going into that year, coming off of seventh grade, I joined jazz band. I made honor band. I'm taking lessons now. I'm starting to understand music a little bit more. And then I'm going to finals in 2008, and I see Spartacus, where I see the Bluecoats in their show, who I end up marching with in their show, being a memorable one too, with the
Uh-huh.
knockout, and doing all of that. And it's like, oh, I actually understand this now a little bit more, and I like this. This is kind of dope. Um, yeah, and then we get through eighth grade, and then 2009, my brother's last year. By that point, my brother is leadership. He's the horn sergeant at Teal Sound at that point, and he is beloved by many, if not all, that year. He has a solo in 2009 in that show, but solo not in the form of playing, but in the form of dancing. As growing up, my brother was and still is a very huge Michael Jackson enthusiast.
Cool.
Um, and to the point where for him growing up, he learned to dance
And
very
moonwalk.
well, like him. Oh, not just moonwalk, everything.
That's cool.
And videos that he would post and everything. He won a high school talent show doing a rendition of Billie Jean, the dance routine. And Yeah, so in the 2009 Teal Sound show, his age out year, Horn Sergeant, there's a moment in the show where he has a dance solo where he does Michael Jackson moves in the middle of the show. And it's him because he gets to take off his hat, his shako for that. And yeah, and really cool moments like, hey, that's my brother down there doing the thing. You could see it. And it's on the video and all of that too that you can go and watch. So being a part of that, I think there was a lot of there's a lot of good energy and just seeing that come to light too, of seeing different parts of him being showcased. And then of course, again, by this point, I'm starting to know a little bit more about music, and I'm moving into high school at this point. And coming off of making all state in eighth grade, and
Uh-huh.
starting to be more and more excited about playing.
Now, did you do jazz band in eighth grade year also? And did you make the jazz band for region, or did they have a jazz band?
Um, I did do jazz band in eighth grade. That was the year that I played trombone.
Right.
Um, but I know I did not audition for anything for jazz, but I'm trying to remember if we even had it, because at this point we're talking about 2008, 2009, around the time of the recession. And at this point, because this becomes a big theme of my high school experience, a lot of music programs start to become laid off and start to go away. And I'm not sure if jazz band all state existed at that point, but I can't remember. I want to say that it went away at some point during that time. Or at least it wasn't very well advertised as an opportunity.
Mhm.
I'll put it that way. Um,
Now, you
but yeah,
said so you took two different private lessons throughout your well, going into eighth grade and throughout eighth grade.
yeah,
Okay, so who's your trombone private lesson teacher?
I don't remember. It was a person at Music and Arts Music Store,
Gotcha.
and unfortunately, I don't remember their name.
So did you just take it to get the basic foundation, and then okay, cool,
Yeah.
ready? Because you can definitely articulate all your a majority of the euphonium studies because most of what we see is from trombone literature anyway, and coordinate all that. So that's fantastic. Wow. Okay, so going in, you'd gone to high school at the same high school your brother went to.
I did not.
Oh, you did not. Okay. So how's that like set up? Because you getting to watch your brother's high school band, and however that looked like. Did you know that you were going to go to a different high school?
Yes. So at the time when my brother went to high school, this high school that I went to was not built yet.
Ah,
So while I was in middle school, a new high school was built much, much closer to our home, and that's where I ended up being zoned to go to.
so you're the first senior class then, probably.
No, it was I can't remember what year it was built, but I was definitely like the first, like the fifth or sixth senior class. Definitely pretty early on. Like I want to say, I think it was my brother. Well, actually, it wasn't while I was in middle school. I think it was my brother's senior year of high school, which would have been my fifth grade year, was when the school was completed.
Gotcha.
Thinking when it opened. Uh, but yeah, it was definitely like because I think I remember there was something going out that my brother his senior year he had the choice between staying at the same high school or going to the new school. I think, and obviously he chose to stay with his friends at the other school. Um, but yeah,
So, did any of the staff of the new high school kind of scout you and scout your other classmates and kind of help out with the band during your seventh and eighth grade year that you
no,
remember?
I don't remember too much. I think in eighth grade, of course, we there was like an eighth grade night, and I think the high school director maybe came over a couple other times, but there wasn't a whole lot of interaction that I remember.
Fair enough. That's as you've as you're at your doctoral level now. Do you think that's a big in potential in middle school, high school relationships that is underutilized currently? Or do you think that what you went through is more idealistic?
As far as the engagement between the high school and middle school,
Yeah,
um, I would definitely say that a high school director being around in the middle school as often as they can is beneficial, just because it adds to this process of it being a full encompassing program from whenever you start band all the way through to the end. Now, of course, to my understanding, I believe that's more commonplace where you are.
yeah.
But in my experience, it's less commonplace in other states. And again, I know by the time I was in middle school and high school, this was around the time of the recession where they were laying off band directors. And the high school program that I went to, even though it was a newer school, it was still a relatively big program because it was a very highly populated area. And one of the things that I would, in general, come to grips with as I started to teach myself later on and get an education degree is to understand how much was probably on my high school band director's plate that probably should not have been. Because long story short, I think the program that I went to was 300 plus the high school program when I was there.
Mhm.
And most of the years that I was there, he was the only one
Wow. Not even the middle school directors would help out?
because there was only one middle school director and there were even more middle school students. Like for this entire feeder, there were probably like twice as many students, like 500, 600 students in this entire feeder program
Right. Like two schools
combined.
for this one.
Yeah, middle school, a middle school and a high school, and they were combined. two band directors, one for the high school and one for the middle school.
Your high school only has one feeder program?
I think at that time they may have had two, but
Wow.
again, it was just a tough time
Right.
because the county was laying off assistant band directors, so every school only had one, and our program was not small. So,
That's crazy.
you
Um,
know, I understand that they were. I understood later that that they were doing the best that they could with
absolutely.
the they were dealt.
Well, so going back to seventh, eighth grade years, or maybe even when did your when did your parents make the move, or did they make the move in getting you your own trombone or your own euphonium or your own instruments, or did you rent from the school or from music and arts, or how did that go?
I only rented from the school. I didn't get my own euphonium until my parents were certain that I was going to college for music, which wasn't until I had applied to college in my senior year. That
Okay.
was the only time when I got my own instrument.
Okay, so that's going to be a wild ride. And I think if I almost want to round up our interview here with your second in series, unless you have the time to move forward and crush your high school years. I'm going to leave the floor up to you on this one because I would love to take the journey with you and ride it till through high school, but time permitting, and you have a lot on your plate yourself currently.
We can save the high school for next time.
Roger that. Um, wow, that's going to be exciting. Um, for those that are watching, thank you for joining us on his second in series. Take a look and find his channel right here, as well as all the Living History series interviews, including his first down here. And below is where you can find out his blogs, all this good stuff that can be found at internationaleuphoniumsummit.com/Benjamin Horne or at farmfordreams.com. Until next time, thank you all for watching. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you, everybody, and see you next time, and happy holidays. Bye for now.